It was damp and dank outside, drizzling with fine rain and howling in the cold wind. A young pregnant woman with a belly as big as a watermelon and carrying heavy bags from the supermarket was walking down the alley to the apartment building. She was huffing and puffing, stopping every now and then to rest and rubbing her lower back. At the entrance, she shrieked when she saw that the elevator wasn't working again. She had to go up to the 9th floor. She felt sick at the thought. A neighbor athlete ran up the stairs. He saw the unfortunate woman and felt sorry for her. "Hello, Ellie. Why are you carrying such heavy weights? You're pregnant, and it would be better if you were a single woman. You have a rich husband and a car of your own. Can't he go shopping? Give me the bags, I'll help you, or else you'll give birth in the entryway." The woman was embarrassed, but nevertheless she looked at her neighbor with great gratitude, handed over the bags, and followed him up the stairs. "Thank you, Alex." "Well, you know my Steve. He's always at work. He only comes home when it's dark and then only to spend the night. I've been asking him to buy groceries for weeks, but he forgets. So I decided to go myself. But all we women are the same. I thought I would buy only meat and milk cart, and in the end came to my senses when the cart was full. And then this elevator failed again. It doesn't work. Oh, here we are. Why don't you and Mary come over for tea?" The man waved cheerfully. "I'll rush, Ellie, maybe over the weekend. Good luck to you. I wish you a rich baby. You and Steve have waited so many years for this. So you take care of yourself. Don't overexert yourself." The woman undressed and began to sort out her bags, and suddenly she felt so sad. It's true, Steve hasn't been interested in his family lately. What you say to him, what you don't say to him, goes in one ear and out the other. He's always on the phone with someone, running around with work on his mind. Wouldn't you ask me how I'm feeling? Maybe help me with something around the house? Ellie poured herself some tea, drank it in small sips, and the tears kept choking and stinging her eyes. It wasn't always like this. After all, Steve had chosen her, fallen in love with her, proposed to her, even though his parents were against it. Ellie was an orphan, brought up in an orphanage, had nothing. But she was not discouraged, went to study accounting, math was easy for her, and at the same time attended chef courses. For the soul, cooking her from a small age beckoned. But only to realize their dreams in the orphanage did not work out. Harmful cook did not let the girl in the dining room. Ellie graduated from technical school successfully, but it was difficult to find a job in her specialty without experience. Then she got a job at a confectionery factory, where she was hired with pleasure. There was always a shortage of workers. She gladly baked fragrant buns and muffins, on-the-fly memorizing techniques, decorated cakes. She really liked this business. One day, some important dignitaries, investors, a whole delegation with folders in their hands came to the factory. Especially for this event was ordered to bake a huge cake, and it was Ellie who carried it. The director decided that a young slender beauty with a long braid would please the eyes of important and necessary people. And so it was. Everyone appreciated the masterpiece, admired the delicious treat, discussed its design, wondered what the cake tasted like. And one of the guests, a stately man, began to compliment the girl. "Well, gentlemen, if such beauties here bake such masterpieces, then the business is definitely profitable. What's your name, my lovely creature? How long have you been working at Sweetums? What's your experience? Care to share?" Ellie was so confused, flushed, but the director looked at her very eloquently, and she quickly pulled herself together and began to answer cheerfully. "Ellie, I've been working for a year. I like cooking, I like to fantasize, draw patterns. Our cakes and pastries only from fresh products. The owner personally all counter shrieked. And the salary is good, everything suits me. Help yourselves." Everyone clapped, laughed, and the negotiations went on in a kind and warm format of sitting over tea. The headmaster showed Ellie around the classroom and was pleased with her. The girl exhaled and hurried back to the kitchen, to her workplace, her hands shaking and her knees shaking. And that green-eyed man kept standing in front of her eyes. He looked that way, in a special way, and for some reason her heart was ready to jump out of her chest. At the end of the shift, when Ellie was putting the last batch of pies in the oven, a waitress, Ellen, ran into the kitchen. She came up to the girl and slipped her a note with the words, "Take this, the gentleman gave it to you. He said it was for Ellie. You're a lucky girl. He must have taken a liking to you. Maybe he'll offer you a better place." The surprised girl unfolded the note and read, I can't forget the most beautiful craftswoman. I'm waiting for you tomorrow at 8 at the monument to Pushkin on Goncharova. I promise you a wonderful evening. Your Steve. Ellie stood there like a stumbling block, reading every letter and could not believe her happiness. She breathed in the smell of the gorgeous, expensive perfume and smiled dreamily. This is how Ellie and Steve had a stormy romance, how passionately they loved each other, could not breathe, cherished every second spent together. And 6 months later they had a lavish wedding, and Ellie moved from her shabby one-room apartment to her husband's luxurious apartment. At first, life seemed like a paradise, like a fairy tale. To her, an orphan who had seen nothing but a dreary, shabby orphanage, it was as if a whole new, interesting, real life was opening up. Steve took her to exhibitions of paintings and premieres of plays, patiently taught her everything, how to behave in high society, how to maintain a conversation. He even liked it, because Ellie caught every word he said and idolized her husband. But her husband's parents were not at all delighted with their daughter-in-law, and every time she came to visit them, they criticized Ellie and tried to tease her. You've already lived for a year. When should my father and I expect grandchildren? I hope you can do at least that, dearie. You don't have any other talents, Ellie replied resentfully. Why do you say that? I'm an accountant by profession, and I've worked as a cook, but Steve doesn't want me to, and we will definitely have a child, all in due time. Mother-in-law venomously remarked, To me, a lousy accountant, she graduated from technical school. What kind of education is that? At least a university of a shabby what? A disgrace. And her sister-in-law is a cook, so awesome. Ellie was offended. She hoped that Steve would stand up for her, because her mother-in-law was clearly overreaching and openly bullied her. But the son of the mother-in-law was not in a hurry to besiege his mother, just transferred the conversation to another topic, but also repeatedly told his wife that it would be time to think about the heir. Ellie herself was very worried that she could not get pregnant, and then there was such pressure. In 10 years she had been pregnant only once, but before she and Steve could rejoice, she had miscarried. Both of them experienced this tragic moment hard, even distanced a little. The husband went more and more into work, always running around the house with the phone, and completely stopped noticing everything that Ellie does at home. Delicious lunches and dinners, cleanliness and order, and took everything for granted. The woman wanted to go to work, but Stevie was against it, saying that it is not proper for the wife of a businessman to work as a cook. It is not a prestigious profession. Instead, he entrusted his wife to lead his accounting in the firm, and when he realized that she is excellent at everything, began to regularly carry reports home. Everything suited him, a personal accountant and a wife, and no need to pay a salary, a total savings. So it turned out that Ellie sat at home 24 hours a day, only knew that served her husband, and he kept getting distant, to talk, except for reports, and that was nothing to talk about. The woman was quite desperate and began to persuade her husband to take the baby from the orphanage. He took it with a chill, but heartily agreed. They began to prepare documents, went to the orphanage, looked at the kids. Ellie was happy to take care of the kids. She was in their skin, brought them sweets, tried to cheer them up and support them. The kids were drawn to her, and the woman could not decide who to take into the family. There were no good and bad, but every little person had some personal tragedy behind them. So many of them became rigid or, on the contrary, withdrawn, as a reaction to grief. Ellie knew it too, like no one else, and tried to find a key for communication. And then, when the documents were almost ready, Ellie suddenly got pregnant. It was a real miracle. You can't call it anything else. Steve was so excited. He dreamed of a son, of an heir, imagined how he would teach him everything, how he would pass on his business. Pregnancy was difficult. Ellie had already been in labor twice. Steve was also nervous, afraid that his wife would lose the child again. And at first their relationship warmed. The spouse became caring and gentle as before. But when everything settled down, and the doctors reported that probably will be a girl, Steve, as if replaced, he frowned and grumbled. How could it be? I've been dreaming of a son for years. And here's a girl. Dresses, bows, that's your thing. What am I supposed to do with her? Who am I supposed to hand over the business to? Ellie was indignant. I'm sorry, my love, the sex of the child doesn't depend on me. We have waited so many years for this pregnancy, so dreamed of children. What difference does it make if it's a boy or a girl? Personally, I will love my baby more than anyone else in the world. I hope you will too. By the way, girls love daddy even more than mom. Steve threw angrily. You don't know that, you're an orphan. She's giving me examples. Ellie became so offended she cried and went to the bedroom. The woman did not recognize her husband. Why had he become so angry? Allowing himself to talk like that, hurting her. This had never happened before. Since that moment, the couple again went cold. Steve was at work 24 hours a day, went to sleep in the living room. He was more and more often irritated about something and began to reproach Ellie that she got fat and dull. And in general, he looked at her almost with squeamishness and stopped getting involved in family affairs. The woman was very worried, crying, because before the birth is nothing, less than a month left, and they live like neighbors in the communal room. And what would happen when the baby was born? Ellie finished her tea, sighed, and went to cook dinner. Steve would be home from work soon. In spite of everything, she still loved her husband very much and decided to surprise him by cooking his favorite salmon with cream sauce. She tried, she fiddled, and everything came out perfect, as always. Cooking was her passion. She put her whole soul into each dish. Finally, the front door slammed. Her husband came in. Ellie rushed to meet him, awkwardly reaching out to hug him. He reluctantly kissed her cheek in passing and said, "Hello." Whoa, 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 whoa. What's with all this calf tenderness on the doorstep? I'm tired as a dog. Is dinner ready? Ellie said, I missed you so much, honey. You don't look like your family. Everything's ready. Your favorite salmon. Steve thawed a little and peacefully responded, Good for you, my Columbo. You've made me happy. I love fish. Then I quickly washed my hands and to the table. They ate dinner. Ellie told them that she had gone to the supermarket, had been to the doctor, had done the last screening. The baby was fine. She was about to give birth. Her husband listened half-heartedly, nodding while he was texting on the phone. After eating a hearty meal, he leaned back in his chair and suddenly said, Thank you. It was delicious. It was delicious. I wanted to tell you that I have to go on a business trip right away tomorrow morning. Why don't you pack me the usual stuff? I'm going to rest because my head is not thinking straight. I'm having a lot of problems at work. Ellie was dumbfounded, dropped the cup, and it fell to the floor with a clatter and shattered. But the woman didn't notice it. How's the business trip? And for how long? I'm going into labor soon. Any day labor can begin. And what will I do alone? Well, couldn't you cancel it and send someone else? I'm nervous enough as it is. How can you do this, Steve? Don't you give a damn about me and the baby? The man reluctantly picked up a broom, swept up the splinters and began to justify himself. What's with the hysteria, Ellie? Why do you have to break dishes? Yes, I can't refuse and not go. Otherwise I'll lose everything. Do you realize it or not? Don't worry. You're due in 3 weeks. I'll be back in time. You're stressed out at work. I can't get any peace at home. Stop acting like a cranky child. Everything will be fine. I won't be gone long. Ellie cried, waved her hand and went to pack her husband's traveling bag, while her husband lay down on the sofa in front of the TV and started talking on the phone with someone again. The husband left early in the morning, while Ellie was asleep, without even saying goodbye, as if he had run away. In the afternoon, her spouse panicked and packed her anxious bag. All the necessary things for childbirth and the baby, documents and exchange card. She realized that there was no one else to hope for. From worries and stress, she began to whimper in her lower abdomen and pull her lower back. And in general, she felt uneasy, as if something bad was bound to happen. She was so scared. What if the labor started early? What would she do? There were no faithful friends. Those who were still in the technical school or at work have long become strangers. They have their own lives. They rarely saw each other and do not want to burden them with their problems. There were no relatives, and her husband's parents lived in another city, and they were unlikely to help their hated daughter-in-law. Steve was rushing to the airport. Next to sit charming, searing brunette Catherine, his new mistress, and they were going on vacation to a resort. He already imagined what an unforgettable adventure awaited him. The warm sea, the gentle sun of Spain, and such a sweet woman next to him. Not like his fat wife. How she was annoying him lately. Figure blurred, a solid walking balloon, swollen legs, and those callow eyes. Always she looked at him with some hopelessness and reproach. Yes, he'd loved her for years and been faithful. It was true. But then everything became so boring. The days became monotonous, and the family bed had long ago become boring. He thought that at least she would give birth to a son, but it didn't work out. It would be a girl. The man so wanted to drive, ease, again feel young and full of strength, and embrace a slender, gentle body. So in his life, and appeared Catherine. Their romance flared like a match, recently, when his wife was already in a position. At first he was tormented by his conscience because he was so meanly acted, cheating on a pregnant wife. But it was worth a sultry beauty naughty finger on his hand and wink. All Steve no longer belonged to himself. He dropped everything and rushed to her apartment, where he was carried away to the seventh heaven of pleasure. Clearly Catherine demanded attention, expensive gifts, so the man began to bring home less and less money. And a week ago the mistress suddenly suggested lounging with him in bed and drinking champagne. "Love, I want to go to the sea, right now. Let's go for a week, have a vacation. You are completely tired, winded. I promise complete relaxation." Steve was dumbfounded and at first hesitated. "You're asking the impossible. My wife is due to give birth any day now. I have to be around no matter what. We will definitely with you rest, my love." But a little later, "It's not the time now." The woman suddenly jumped out of bed and started throwing his things in Steve's face. "Ah, so? Well, get out. Run to your pregnant cow. And don't come back, okay? If you don't love me." "So what if I'm about to give birth? Doctors are always overreacting. You said you're due in December. It's almost a month away. Nothing will happen to her if you go away for a week. Do I ask you that often? Tell me. You're not divorcing her anyway. And I put up with all this. Do you think I like being just a comfort girl for you? Either go to the sea with me or end our love." The man even scared. Catherine was for him like a drug. He could not already without her. And the character of this sultry beauty and really explosive. This is not a dull wife, who will be patient without complaint and will not say a word. And then, he had unforeseen difficulties, and it would be good to hide and sit somewhere far away from home. So he decided, reassuring himself that nothing terrible would happen. After all, was he a man or not? He could relax for once in his life. They were already taking off. Catherine held his hand, and Steve was absolutely happy, anticipating all the delights of a vacation with the most desirable woman in the world. And let the world wait. Ellie was worried about how her husband had gotten there. In fact, she hadn't even had time to ask him where he was going, what city he was going to. She started calling him, but his phone was out of range. She was exhausted. Her stomach was hurting more and more often. She was getting worse and worse. By evening, the contractions intensified. She couldn't wait, and Ellie dialed the emergency number in a panic. Thank God the paramedics arrived quickly, and she had everything she needed with her, so she was immediately taken to the hospital. The labor was long and lasted almost 24 hours. The woman was exhausted. They even wanted to do a cesarean, but thank God everything went well, and by morning she safely gave birth not to a daughter, but to a son. She was so happy because Steve dreamed of a son. He would be happy. He would have an heir. She called her husband again and again, but in vain. He either did not pick up the phone or his phone was turned off. The woman had mixed feelings. On the one hand, the happiness of motherhood. She kissed her baby, pressed to her native lump, and on the other hand, she even shared this joy was not with whom. Her husband disappeared, no one came to her maternity hospital, and it was so frustrating. Other moms were visited by their husbands, relatives, carried huge packages and flowers, congratulated, and she at such moments cried secretly and turned her back to the wall. Her neighbors on the ward did not even believe that she was married. They thought she was lying. "You have no one. You've been lying alone for days." Men, of course, are not gifts, but to not visit your wife even once, it doesn't happen like that. Just say you had a baby for yourself. What's the big deal? Why lie? At least eat an apple, it's our treat. You're as pale as a moth. Ellie was so offended. In fact, the women in labor are right. How can it be? Her husband's missing and I don't care about her or the baby. The envelope in that had to ask to by strangers, relatives of one of the neighbors on the ward. Ellie left the hospital with the baby in her arms, called a cab, and went home. And around the cars, decorated with balloons, and relatives with husbands, languishing in anticipation, holding cameras and cameras at the ready. But only it was meeting other moms, rejoicing with other babies, and no one cared about her. She gave birth and so on. Tears choked her. Her mood was worse than ever. Ellie almost cried in the cab. The driver, a complete stranger to her, congratulated her and wished her baby health, but her husband never called her back. Is it really like that? And even for the baby, we didn't buy anything in advance. Bad luck. We thought Steve would buy everything when the baby was born. And here she is, all alone, with nothing in the fridge and a baby in her arms, crying. You can't go out for bread and you can't leave your son alone. Before Ellie could look around and undress, the doorbell rang insistently. She rushed to open the door in case Steve had come back and everything would be all right. But no. There was a tall, sturdy man standing on the doorstep, who strode in without waiting for an invitation and asked in a businesslike manner, adjusting his glasses, "Steve lives here? Get him right away. I have a serious conversation to have with him." Ellie was stunned and didn't know what to say. Yes, he lives here, but, my husband is on a business trip. He left a week ago. He's not picking up the phone. He's disappeared. I'm all nervous myself. I just got back from the hospital, and I can't get him on the phone. I'm worried. Maybe something bad happened to Steve. He couldn't have abandoned me and my son, could he? No way. What happened? Why are you looking for him? The man frowned. He ran away, so he's a bastard. Recently, he borrowed a huge sum of money from me, promised to pay me back in 3 days, and disappeared. He said it was an emergency. He needed money for his family. I thought maybe he was in some kind of grief or something like that, so I believed him and lent it to him. I took that money out of the company's circulation, and if I don't pay it back, I'm in trouble. I didn't realize businessmen could be so sneaky. Well, I'll get him out from under the ground and shake him out of his debt. After these words, Ellie felt sick, and she began to fall to the floor, losing consciousness. Not only that, but as she fell, she hit the closet and collapsed. The baby, as if sensing that his mother was in trouble, began to scream and cry hard throughout the apartment. The visitor himself was frightened and did not know what to do now. He barely found a first aid kit in the kitchen and began to bring smelling salts to the woman's nose, waving a towel at her and hitting her on the cheeks. I felt her head. There was a huge bump on the back of her head. She came to her senses, grimaced with pain, and rubbed the sore spot. And when she heard her son scream, she immediately rushed to the child, forgetting about herself. She took him in her arms, began to rock him, wailing, "Quiet, quiet, my sweetie, scared, right? It's okay, Mommy's here, calm down." The baby in his mother's arms did calm down, and Ellie begged the intruder, "I really don't know where Steve is. I'm sorry, I just got out of the hospital today. We haven't even bought anything for the baby yet. It's hard enough as it is. And now you're here. Are you going to torture me? Threaten me? I don't have millions. I'm just a housewife. When my husband arrives, you can ask him. But I can't believe Steve would run off and leave his family. We've been together for years. We love each other. He wanted a son. You're all lying." The stranger changed his tone. "Pardon me for scaring you. I really overdid it. My name is Ethan. I own a chain of gas stations and snack bars. I am known in the city, many people. What's your name? Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I'm not a bandit or a beast. Yes, I'm angry with your husband, it's true, but it has nothing to do with you or the child. Try calling your husband again. If he doesn't pick up, I promise I'll leave right away." The woman sighed. "I've been calling him 100 times a day for a week now, all to no avail. My name is Ellie, and I've decided to name my son John." She dialed her husband's number on the video link without much hope, and then the video suddenly came on. A tanned, gorgeous brunette in a bikini was looking at the screen. Behind her back was the azure coast, and in her hands a glass with a cocktail. She hissed angrily, "Hello, chicken. How long are you going to ring? I'm sick of it. Steve and I are together, having a vacation, and you only disturb us with your calls." Suddenly they saw a frightened Steve running to the beauty. He was also with a terrific tan, in beach shorts and a hat, looked guiltily at his wife and inarticulately said, "Ellie, how are you? It's not what you thought. I'll explain it all to you later now." But when Steve saw the creditor, his face changed and he threatened him. "You're such an asshole, leaving your wife with a baby and having so much fun with your mistress. Have you forgotten about your debt? To be home in 3 days and return the money, or I'll get you out of the ground, got it? If you don't pay me the money, I'll take it away for your debts." Steve immediately passed out, and Ellie sat down on the couch and began to sob uncontrollably. She covered her face with her hands and cried, I'm so ashamed. It's like they poured a bucket of slop on my head. I just can't believe my eyes. My hair is standing on end. I was worried like a fool. I wanted to call hospitals and morgues. I thought I'd go to work to Steve. I didn't know where to find him. I thought he was in trouble. And there he is in bed with that bimbo. That bastard. I gave him the best years of my life. I loved him so much. Idolized him. He asked me to give birth to a son. And it turns out he didn't need me or the baby for ages. I just cannot realize and digest all this. I think I'm going to die. How am I supposed to live? I can't live under the same roof as Steve anymore. I don't want to see him anymore. I don't have much money, I don't have enough to rent an apartment, and there's so much to buy for the baby. Why am I so unlucky? That's right. That's what I need. I'm a fat, ugly woman. I gained 10 pounds during pregnancy, and this one is like this, not a single flaw. Ellie cried, completely lost in herself. She didn't notice that the visitor still hadn't left and was sitting next to her, thinking about something of his own, and she was saying it all out loud. Then he stood up abruptly, picked up Ellie's unopened bag, and said confidently, "Get dressed, Ellie. You'll stay with me for a while. The mansion is big enough for all of you. You won't bother me. Let things settle down, and then you can come home if you want to. Don't worry about anything, or you'll lose your milk. Just think of your son now. Nothing else matters." Ellie looked up at the strange man with tears in her eyes. "Are you crazy? I've never seen you before in my life. How am I going to live with strangers? What will your wife say? Do you think she'll be very happy?" "No, I can't do that." Ethan resolutely went to the coat rack, took off her coat, and gallantly presented, "An objection is not accepted. You have a force majeure and I will help you. Here's my card. Banners advertising my gas stations all over the city, so I'm not some kind of scammer. I promise nothing bad will happen to you. I live with my daughter, Claire, a widower. You're not going to get in anyone's way. Don't push yourself into a corner. You can't handle things on your own right now. So let me help you, out of the goodness of my heart. Shall we go?" Ellie hesitated for a few minutes, but then she looked at her son and decided, "Fuck it all. I'm not going to make it on my own, and I'm not going back to Steve, ever. I'm going to stay with this big guy for a while and then I'll see what happens." She left her keys in the hallway and slammed the door behind her. All the way there she cried quietly again, realizing that she would never come back here again. All her usual family life had gone to tatters, her world had collapsed, her life had turned upside down. Resentment at her husband and jealousy, humiliation were tearing her from the inside, and what would happen next, she could not imagine at all. A week ago she was frying pancakes and waiting for her husband from work, and now she was abandoned with a baby. It was a long drive. The mansion was outside the city, right in the forest area. They were met by the maid. She listened to all the instructions of the owner and immediately took Ellie and her son to settle in a cozy room on the second floor. It was bright, clean, and very cozy. It smelled of wood and some herbs. The maid chirped, "My name is Louise and the cook's name is Wendy. If you need anything you can contact me right away. There's a nanny, Pam, who looks after Claire. Maybe she can help you with your son. I'll ask her. You two make yourselves comfortable. There's clean linens in the closet, clothes. Dinner's at 7's in the dining room. We'll be waiting for you." Ellie thanked her, undressed her son, changed his diaper and fed him. John behaved calmly, not capricious, ate well, and immediately fell asleep. And the woman began to look around. She took a shower, changed her clothes too, and went out for dinner at 7, as it was said. There was a cute little girl about 5 years old already sitting in the dining room. She was playing with a doll, and supposedly feeding it from a spoon. When she saw Allie and the baby, she exclaimed, "Hi, I'm Claire. Daddy's not here, he's away on some important business. He said he had to stay with you. You're going to live with us now. That's what Daddy said. Isn't he cute? What's his name? Can I touch him?" The little girl was friendly and sociable. She asked Allie questions. They hit it off, had a nice dinner together, and Claire took Allie into the nursery, showed her room, and tried to entertain little John with a wind-up toy. Suddenly there was a bass voice at the door. "Hello, everybody. Come on, let's go sort out the presents, because we're short-handed." Claire happily hugged her father, and Ellie gasped when she saw what only did not buy Ethan: a crib, a bathtub for bathing, a whole bag of things for the baby, baby formula, a mountain of diapers, and a fancy chic stroller. The woman didn't know how to thank him. Thank you so much, Ethan. You spent so much. I do not know when I can give you everything. After all, with a baby I cannot get a job. You're just my savior. And your daughter is wonderful. We are friends. The man smiled and replied, Don't make me laugh, I spent a lot. I bought everything I needed for the first time, no more. What's the score? All later. Let's put everything in your room so you'll be comfortable. Make yourselves at home. Live as long as you need to. It's even better for me. Claire won't be bored. I'm always busy. I'm only home late at night, and my daughter misses me so much. And of course, she misses her mom, and unfortunately, I can't replace her. Since the death of my wife 4 years ago, no woman has ever crossed the threshold of this house. You're the first, so you're welcome. Ellie was so grateful to Ethan. She respected him very much. He was a real man, a man of his word. He cared so much about his daughter, and he didn't run around with mistresses. He smelled of reliability. And she was also cozy in the house of a businessman. With Claire they got along. Now they did everything together. Even the nanny was not needed. The girl loved fiddling with little John. She was happy to ride him in the stroller, just like in the game of mother's daughter. Meanwhile, Steve was tearing and metal. He could not contain his anger and yelled at Catherine. Why did you take a call from your wife? What have you done? You've ruined my life. What will happen now? I'm finished. I'm not going through a divorce. Ellie's not going to forgive me. But that's half the problem. What about the debt? We're still partying on that money. How am I supposed to pay it back? Am I to wander and hide for the rest of my life? Catherine pressed her lips and replied, With your chicken should have divorced a long time ago. Well, let her know everything. That we love each other and happy. And about the debt. Be more cunning. Deceive the creditor. Think of something. You can if you want. Don't worry. Everything will work out. Don't be mad, Kitty. I'll give you a relaxing massage. Steve listened to the words of his mistress, thought for a long time, and in his head drew up a cunning plan, how to get rid of both the creditor and the debt, and at the same time to stay in the win-win. He immediately packed his things and flew home. He entered the apartment, looked around. It was empty and quiet, dust everywhere, and Ellie hadn't been here for a long time. He thought frantically, where had she gone? An orphan with nothing to show for it. She had a shabby little apartment, and that was sold long ago. How to make peace with her? What should I lie? I don't need a divorce right now. It's a big blow to my image. I'll deal with Ethan first, and then I'll deal with Ellie. She'll forgive me, sheep. She's not going anywhere. She's got nowhere to go anyway, and nothing to live on. The grief-stricken husband began to call Ethan, having previously turned on the phone to record. Allo, Ethan, I'm already in town. Listen, I have no money, but I'm ready to give my company. I have no other way out. Come to the garage complex near the stadium. Tomorrow at 5 at the gate, I will bring all the documents. Ethan was dumbfounded. Reasoned. Long ago would be so. And why in the garage? Let's go straight to the notary. We'll reissue everything. But Steve stammered, No, this is my condition. It's either that or nothing. I'll give you the documents and then do whatever you want. You've got me cornered. Ethan snorted. Well, as you say, but it's not me. It's you yourself cornered there. See you later. And don't you dare run away again. I'll find you and kill you. Steve rubbed his hands together. Everything was going as well as it could. He immediately rushed to the place of their meeting tomorrow and set up a video surveillance camera and began to prepare for negotiations. Ethan arrived on time. Steve held out the documents for the company and then suddenly snatched them. No, I won't give it to you. It's my business. How dare you? Ethan did not understand anything. He began to shout, Oh, well, return the documents. What's the play, Steve? Quickly gave everything. That's it. Now get out of here, liar and loser. Ethan left, and Steve was almost jumping for joy. The performance went like a sheet. He grabbed the camera and rushed to the police. There began to cry that Ethan Shorokov, a well-known businessman, took away his business by force, intimidated and threatened with death, and presented all the evidence, the record of the phone conversation and the camera. Everything was not in Ethan's favor, and the investigator was forced to arrest the businessman and put him in isolation on suspicion of extortion, and he was facing a long sentence. When Ethan did not return home in the evening, Ellie panicked. Now his phone was unavailable. She wailed, Oh my God, what could have happened? Where is he? What should Claire say? Where to run to? It's just some evil fate. She couldn't find a place for herself. She could hardly keep herself in front of the girl, lest she should alarm her. She put the children to bed, and she looked out all her eyes, waiting for the businessman. And in the middle of the night there was a phone call. The number was a stranger. Ellie immediately picked up the phone. Ethan whispered quickly and spoke confusingly. Ellie, listen and don't interrupt. I'm in the detention center. Your husband set me up. Go right now to my office. There is a safe. Dial 3587. There is money. Take what you need and get me a lawyer. You got it? And take care of Claire. I can't talk. The phone rang and Ellie didn't get a word in edgewise. She was really scared. So Steve's back. And he didn't even call her. What a bastard. In the morning, Ellie gave the children to the nanny and started searching the internet for the contacts of the lawyer. She managed to call and arrange a meeting. The woman begged him. I assure you, Ethan Petrovich is a decent man and not guilty of anything. Steve set him up. It wasn't like that. I'll tell you everything right now. Will you defend him? She told everything she knew about the story of the loan and looked hopefully at the older man with the beard, who was thinking and calculating something in his mind. The lawyer had taken the case, though his services were not cheap, but everyone in town knew he was the best in the business. He helped him get Ethan some warm clothes to the lockup. The same day, Steve showed up, calling Ellie. Honey, I'm back. The apartment's empty. Where are you? Allie, let's talk like adults. I love you and my daughter, and I don't want a divorce. What you saw was just a little fling that didn't mean anything. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. The woman couldn't take it anymore. Our good husband didn't even know he had a son, not a daughter. Where were you when I needed help? You were in bed with a bimbo. And all this is nothing to you? I'm filing for divorce and I don't want to be under the same roof with you for a second. Why did you smear Ethan? Set him up? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're the one who owes him money, aren't you? Don't you? How can you lie and twist yourself around like that? Come on. You weren't like this? Is that bitch of yours affecting you so much that you're losing your humanity? Take that statement back immediately. Steve got mad. I don't know what you're talking about. So you're mixed up with a creditor? How are you any better than me? You don't stick your nose in a man's business. Oh well, a divorce is a divorce. You'll regret it, you poor orphan. Your boyfriend is about to go to jail, and you'll come crawling back to me. And I'll think about whether to forgive you or not. Maybe the baby isn't mine and you've been fattening it up. Ellie shouted, You're such an asshole, and hung up. 3 weeks passed. Ellie continued to live in Ethan's house, took care of Claire, encouraged the girl, who missed her father terribly, whispered to her, Don't cry, little one, don't cry. Daddy's on a business trip. He'll be here soon. And we have to wait for him. Everything will be all right, you'll see. But Claire persisted. Why doesn't Daddy pick up the phone? He always calls me many times when he's away. When's Daddy coming back? You're not going anywhere? I'm so scared. Ellie hugged the baby and whispered, No, sweetie, I'll be right here. We'll wait for Daddy together. Oh, John's awake. Shall we go give him a bath? Will you help me? I can't do it without you. The next day, Ellie took the baby for a routine checkup at the pediatrician's office. The doctor frowned for a long time, twisted the boy's leg back and forth, bending and unbending. Then he said, I'm going to disappoint you. The baby has a congenital pathology. You need to perform a jewelry operation, and then the leg and the knee will normally bend. The sooner it is done, the better. Otherwise, the baby could be lame for life. That's the way it is. I'll put you on the waiting list under the policy, but you understand, paid surgery will be faster. Ellie asked worriedly, How much will it cost? I'll find the money. My son is my greatest happiness. I don't want him to grow up as an invalid. When the doctor announced the amount, the woman even felt sick. The cost by her standards was just huge. She had no idea where to get such money. It all came back together again. Ethan was in jail. Her son was in trouble. Her ex was getting on her nerves. She made up her mind and, out of desperation, called Steve directly from the hospital. He immediately picked up the phone. Have you come to your senses? You decided to come home? You should have done that a long time ago. I told you, you have nowhere to go. Olga shook. She was terribly unpleasant to address her ex, but she saw no other way out. Steva, listen to me. I'm not in the middle of a relationship right now. Our son is in trouble. He has a congenital pathology. His left leg and the knee does not extend all the way. We have to operate. But it costs a lot of money. Can you help? We can't delay, or John could end up with a disability. She hoped Steve would at least feel sorry for her son and help his own child. But he started yelling angrily into the phone. Are you crazy? Where am I going to get that kind of money? I'm broke. All in debt. God, what kind of chicken are you? You couldn't even give birth to a normal child. You're not like people. You'll ask your lover for money when he gets out of jail in 5 years, since you're living with him now. I can't help you. Ellie couldn't believe what she heard. We don't need a father like that. God will punish you for everything. Don't ever call me again. How blind and stupid I was, living all those years with such a scoundrel. Thank God the lawyer turned out to be really professional. He proved in a week that Steve was lying and found witnesses that Ethan really borrowed him a huge amount of money, and the receipt was found. After a long trial, Ethan was finally released. Ellie and her chauffeur were waiting for him at the prison gate. The kids stayed with the nanny. Claire didn't want to see that. Ethan came out so thin and a little confused, saw the woman and threw his arms around her, so sincere and heartfelt. He almost cried and thanked her. Ellie, do you know what you have done? You saved me. If it hadn't been for the lawyer, I'd have a case for sure. Thank you for helping me out, for babysitting Claire, for everything. You know, I'm not going to let you go anywhere. I'm not going to let you go anywhere. There's no one else like you in the world. And your ex-husband is an idiot for not appreciating a woman like you. Ellie from his embrace was so warm, so good, in them so cozy and calm, that she really did not want him to let her go. Already at home, when everyone had dinner, Claire played with her father and calmed down, and the children went to bed. Ethan decided to ask, Ellie, I've been watching you all evening. You are sad, depressed. What happened? Did I offend you in some way? Or are you so upset because of Steve? The woman sighed and replied, I'm panicking, to be honest. My son has health problems. He needs surgery. I overcame my pride. I called Steve. I thought he would help my own child, but no. He said there was no money. And I don't know where to get it. I have nothing. I've got nothing to sell. I want to go to the noose. Ethan became alarmed and sternly said, So why are you silent? Well, tell me what happened to John. The woman told him everything, showed him the results of the examination and the discharge from the hospital. And she shyly told him how much she had to pay for the emergency operation. She cried quietly, unable to hold back her emotions. Ethan took her hand and led her to his office, opened the safe, took out a wad of money and handed it to her. I think that's enough. Take it and we'll go to the hospital tomorrow. Of course, I'm not exactly on the horse now. All these problems with debts have knocked me out of the rut and business is shaky. I can't hide. But I'm frugal and always save for a rainy day. And for the baby, I do not spare money. The child must grow up healthy. It is not necessary to delay treatment. Ellie clutched the money to her chest and cried, Thank you. Now you've saved me too. I'm forever in your debt. But don't worry. When John grows up, I'll get a job again. I can do bookkeeping or go back to the pastry shop, and I'll pay you back little by little. Will you wait? Ethan frowned. I don't want to hear that again. Or do you want to offend me? I don't mind at all. Work if you like it. But I won't take any money from you. I'm helping you now out of the goodness of my heart, so take it, and let's call it a day. The most important thing is that John gets better. That's the most important thing right now. The baby had surgery. It was a success, and he was recovering. Ellie was with him in the hospital, rocking and feeling sorry for her baby, and Ethan visited her every day. He took the baby in his arms so easily, at ease, and handled the baby skillfully. And the baby seemed to smile at him, opened his mouth and said something in his own way. And Ellie looked at this picture and thought, That's the kind of real man I'm willing to live with for the rest of my life. God, how wrong I was about Steve back then. How could I have loved him blindly all these years? How could I not see that he was selfish, that he was just taking advantage of me, that he was comfortable and convenient with me? When, at what point did he change? He didn't even look at his son, didn't help him. And Ethan has done so much for me in this short time, and I'm not even related to him. We know only nothing. He is a man of his word, faithful, reliable. Ethan did not punish his offender. He knew that soon Steve would be punished by fate itself, because he was broke. He had started everything, and now he was bankrupt, and his company would go to him, and for free. It would be a lesson to the scoundrel for all his misdeeds. And so it was. Steve was completely ruined. Catherine soon left him, finding a more successful and rich beau. After all, she and from Steve needed only money for a beautiful and trouble-free life. Steve came to his senses, biting his elbows, and tried to reconcile with Ellie, but she did not want to hear about it. Soon there was a high-profile divorce, and they became strangers to each other. In court, Ellie said that Steve did not take her from the hospital and never saw her son, did not give money for his surgery, and insisted that he was deprived of his paternal rights. The court accepted her arguments, and now Steve had no right to see his son. But that wasn't all. For debts creditors took away from her ex-husband's apartment, and he was forced to huddle in a room on the outskirts of the city without any facilities and comfort. He started drinking and was sinking to the bottom. He closed his eyes and saw in front of him not the sultry Catherine, but Ellie. She gently woke him up and whispered, "Wake up, my love. Coffee is getting cold. Breakfast is on the table." He would smile in his sleep and wake up and see the empty and dreary surroundings in front of him. He beat his fists helplessly against the wall and cried out in hopelessness. Only now he realized that he had lost everything. How despicable he had done to the woman he loved, how he had trampled and humiliated her. He had never seen his own son in his eyes. And he will never see his own son. He will be raised and loved by Ethan, not him. His son will call him Daddy. But no matter how much he poured vodka on his conscience, nothing could be changed. And in the family, on the contrary, everything was working out just fine. Claire had long ago fallen in love with Ellie and began to call her mom, reached out to her, gladly fiddled with little John and called him little brother. Ethan loved Ellie. For the first time after his wife's death, he fell in love with this simple, quiet, and faithful woman, a caring mother and a thrifty hostess. Just such a friend of life he had always dreamed of. However, despite his sincere feelings, he did not hurry to propose marriage. He saw how hard Ellie was going through the divorce and understood that she needed time to calm down and the pain of resentment and betrayal passed. He was just there, always, surrounded her with care and attention, tried to distract her from bad thoughts. Time flew by unnoticed. Almost a year passed. Ethan couldn't hold back any longer, and on the eve of Ellie's birthday, he decided to surprise her and declare his love for her. In the morning, while Ellie was still asleep, Ethan quietly went and bought a huge bouquet of scarlet roses. Then he walked into her bedroom for the first time without knocking. John was sound asleep, and so was Mom. The man even admired her. How beautiful she was. Her hair was spread on the pillow. She ridiculously propped her chin with the palm of her hand. There was a blush on her cheeks. Ethan leaned over and kissed her timidly on the cheek. His heart skipped a beat. Ellie opened her eyes and looked at him in surprise and suddenly smiled. The man held out the bouquet to her and said softly, "Ellie, I was in a hurry to be the first to wish you a happy birthday, and I wanted you to remember this day for a long time. Here you go. This is my present, or rather the first part of it." Ellie reread the documents, rubbed her eyes sleepily and couldn't understand anything. It said that she, Ellie, was the owner of a pastry shop in the center of the city. The woman glowed and almost wept and asked again, "Is this true? Not a joke? I can't believe it." Ethan hugged her gently. "Yes, I bought this pastry shop recently, especially for you. I remember you told me with such excitement that you love to bake cakes, even though you are an accountant by education. Here you'll be able to do something you like. Are you excited?" Ellie threw her arms around him and kissed him for the first time. So sensual, so sincere, so sweet and tender. Ethan even felt dizzy with happiness. "Thank you, Ethan. You're the best. I still can't believe it. I, an orphan, and suddenly the owner of the pastry shop. It's been a pipe dream of mine since I was a kid. You are like a good wizard, waved a magic wand and made it come true." Ethan smiled and continued, "But that's not all. Be my wife, Ellie. I can no longer hide my feelings. I love you. I promise to always be there for you, for better and for worse, to take care of you and John, and I hope you will accept my proposal." At last Ellie waited for the words she had longed to hear, and immediately answered, "I do. I have long loved you, Ethan. You are the best for me. I see how John is attracted to you. Claire is like a daughter to me. We got along from the first minute. We've been a family for a long time, but I've been waiting for you to make the first move. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I want to open the window and shout to the whole world that I love you." They started kissing passionately and couldn't get away from each other. From that day on, Ellie's life changed dramatically. She plunged headlong into a new business. The nanny helped with the children. The woman quickly got used to it and learned to manage competently. At first, the employees were wary of her, but then they accepted her and began to respect her. Outwardly, Ellie also changed a lot. She cut her hair, lightened it, began to dress fashionably, did not forget to go to the gym and look after herself. The excessive fullness disappeared, and the woman was slim and trim again. It seemed that she had time for everything and always. The house and children were well cared for. Despite the busyness, she tried to give them time. Her husband did not require her to kill herself around the house like her ex, Steve. They had a cook and a housekeeper for that. Only sometimes, at will, Ellie could please her husband and personally bake him a cake or cook something delicious. For Ethan, it was much more important that Ellie felt happy, because a woman is not an appendix to household appliances. It is the most beloved and dear person, and Ellie was insanely grateful to him for that. After all, she was now living a full, rich life, doing what she loved, and there was complete harmony inside her. And only she alone knew what was the reason for her youth and shining eyes. It was that she loved and was loved. Now she fully understood the meaning of the word married. It is right to say, behind husband, behind his back, under his protection, only then a woman is happy. Many years passed. One day a very shabby lady came into a nice cozy pastry shop. She had a broken heel and a lousy mood. She rolled her travel bag in behind her and irritably ordered coffee and dessert while she feverishly reread the rental ads. It was Catherine, once a sultry beauty. She had been dumped by another suitor, for the years had taken their toll, and now she was not the one who had been dumped, but she was being dumped more and more often, choosing younger girls. She never married, did not have children too, somehow stupidly flew life. Catherine had long ago become addicted to wine and cigarettes, and had a stale appearance. The woman watched enviously as a beautiful, statuesque, well-groomed woman, and the same to her likeness, a man came into the hall. She showed him the paintings on the wall and told him how lucky she was to have acquired them, and the man looked at her with such love. The image of the woman seemed familiar to her. That's right, it's Ellie, the same chicken, Steve's wife. How she's changed, just like a business lady. Catherine decided this was her chance and approached the hostess. "Excuse me, do you have any vacancies? I really need a job. Maybe you need a man in the kitchen or behind the cash register." Ellie recognized Catherine, of course, as such things are not forgotten, and answered her sharply. "Miloshka, have you seen yourself in the mirror? It's obvious that you're using." "No, I do not need such valuable personnel. There will be problems later. Anyway, we're closing up now, so—" Catherine ran out like a scalded woman. She was angry. She was humiliated. She was called an alcoholic. And Ellie hugged her husband and walked with him slowly down the alley to the expensive car. At that moment she once again thanked the universe that everything turned out just so, and she met and loved the best man in the world.